I give up. I keep saying this is the worst year for the internet, the worst year for the CC every year, and it just gets monotonous sitting here saying the same garbage, especially when it comes off as so melodramatic at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong, I like making these lists every year, minus the drama that inevitably comes from most of them, but that's just more out of hindsight to bad decisions and looking back at poor wording over anything else. Or at least, that's what I wrote in June or July. It is September as I'm fixing these intro statements, and I don't know how much I agree with the idea that I downplayed or overplayed problems that the community had. I spent a lot of time this year not making content, and it's given me a lot of time to reflect on how I felt about the state of the community and as my content as a whole. And, well, I've made the latter opinion abundantly clear, but I think the former might need a little bit more explaining. These past couple of years have definitely been an interesting time for the slideshow commentary community in particular, and I think that stems from a paradigm shift in how people react to bad videos. Sure, some are lagging in a sense, and are still finding themselves in a situation where they're making content that 2017 would even call problem-ridden or just outright problematic altogether. And a friendly reminder to those who don't remember that year was practically run by edgelords, so to say that some people are still out here making content that is definitely considered bad is kind of starting this decade off with the understatement to beat all understatements. The low points are definitely really low, but I can't find myself getting too angry with a lot of them because that's just the new era at this point. We've lost most of our old inspirations like Ray Kohai, Digital Ty, V Omega, Channel Grey, and in turn have replaced them with new inspirations and people that have helped shape the current environment of the community, and shit, we just don't know how to react. Let's not get it twisted, some older inspirations are still around despite how inactive they can sometimes be, but I'm noticing a lot of newer people are coming in and wanting to be a part of specifically our community because of those people they watched, and it's wholesome, in a way, and with this in mind, I can see our future as a community to be potentially much brighter than maybe the doom and gloom of the past year-end lists have maybe led off to be. With that in mind, though, we can all agree this year was the peak of garbage year so far, right? Like, no, I'm not talking SCC relating, I'm talking in general here. Like, I've gotten so close many a time to have just given up hope that it'll get better myself, because this year felt like an apocalypse was ready to wrap up. But if this video comes out, that means this year wasn't nice enough to kill us, so we'll probably come back at the end of 2021 saying the exact same thing. We had World War III scares, a virus that locked down everywhere, quarantining everyone, riots against American police, against a government in America which were retaliated by those same people showing us exactly why those riots were necessary. Trans rights were set back 30 years, not to mention 2020 was an election year, and that's only America! That's not mentioning the problems the rest of the world had. Alright, back to commentaries. Last year we lost a lot of people from our inner circle of the slideshow commentary community, with a lot of those same people we lost becoming antis of our community, taking every chance they could to belittle us publicly, talk about how toxic we are for being commentators, peer pressuring others into leaving or disassociating from those they considered friends at one point, and the perpetuating of their own problematic behavior persisted into 2020 while we just kept on being commentators. Don't get me wrong, we had our dramas this year. Oh, boy, did we have our dramas this year. But I had a hard time looking at most of the dramas that we had as community-based, seeing as the majority of the people involved were ex-members, like Ray Kohai, V Omega, Channel Grey, Dual Taku, and maybe Dan Stein? The jury's still out on that one. Just to name a few. It's been a trip, for sure, and I hope, regardless of what 2021 sends our way as the world continues to burn around us, I hope we can stay somewhat sane. Here's to hoping. Anyway, you're not here to hear me talk about politics or the patchwork state the CC is in. You're here to hear me have a fit over what I thought were the worst commentaries of 2020, and, yeah, this year's list is a list, for sure. Alright, so for those who are new here, I try to keep it at one per commentator. They had to have been videos I watched enough to get a solidified opinion on, and simply put, they had to come out this year. I figured that would be obvious. Don't take them too much to heart either, as one, these are mostly subjective stances on the commentaries in question. Not everyone will agree that these videos are bad, and hey, if you're among that list, you know, good for you. I just happened to see problems you didn't. And two, anyone can improve from their mistakes. Some of these videos may already not entirely be reflective of the quality of the commentators that the commentaries come from, and as per usual, do not harass anyone mentioned in this video. With all that said, let's begin. chance to talk about the Cloud Palace very often. For those unaware, the Cloud Palace is a commentator group I run consisting of, honestly, I don't know how many members right now. I keep losing count. We at 33, 34, maybe 35? Point is, there's quite a few of us, and we do commentaries together in, like, a central hub. 2019 was rather rocky for us, given a certain video we released that people fucking hated. I'm glad we didn't fuck up again like that this year. In fact, I'd argue this year was pretty chill for the Cloud Palace. We didn't release a ton of videos, but the ones that we did release have been rather fun to watch, such as Smith Plays with Fire, a video I would easily consider one of my favorites this year, and a video on Joshua Culvyhouse, also known as of early 2020, Nintendo Switch Gamer Dude.
Xfinity has some of the best routers.
Shut up, ad. We switched in like October because CenturyLink was too expensive, and we switched back this month. You're spouting absolute bullcrap. I know firsthand. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure what's gotten into Joshua since I last paid attention to his stuff in early 2017, but I'm not gonna lie. Whatever it is, it's kind of reverted him back to the excuse-making, straw-manning, nonsense-spouting commentator that caused the initial Joshua tree to spawn in 2016. And this is easily one of my least favorite de-evolutions I've seen for any commentator, like, ever. Joshua spends a good chunk of this video dodging just about every point we make against his original video, spouting complete nonsense and non-sequiturs often, and I'm not gonna accuse him of doing it because he can't admit to being wrong, but god, if I didn't know Joshua better than that, I probably would.
Actually, that would be a 6 or 7 out of 10. You never took grade class, have you?
Not to mention how much context had been cut from the discussion. Like, almost the entirety of Josh Scorcher and Green Scorpion's original countdown had been cut during this video, which, coincidentally, is the totally opposite extreme to the problem stemmed off of Culvyhouse's original video on Scorcher and Scorpion, where he dragged out the context to an absurd degree and barely covered anything from it. One could accuse him of doing that spitefully, and within reason too, considering the broader context of Culvyhouse's history with Luxter and Zinni this year, where Josh got into some extremely toxic mindsets, especially towards Luxter.
This is the problem I have with your commentaries. You ignore information you leave in to just discredit someone. Your Pokemon list chain commentary is a good example of this. I could probably understand why you leave them in. The only problem is you're only going after the experienced to white knight the inexperienced. This could work if it's just one game in the franchise, but you like to put the minority on a megaphone and have them shout the frustrations. Though, it makes sense why. You are below the 1000th mark and think sticking to minorities is a good idea. Though Josh seems to like it. But that doesn't mean others will. My advice is stick to low-rank YouTubers and debunk them. Though, promotion should help make you better than me, in which you will respond to this if that was the case.
Though, really, any of Joshua's videos this year could have probably made this list. Like, I considered throwing his commentary on Scorcher's Ubisoft fails list on here purely due to how much worse that one is for absurd points that are actually terrible.
It's okay, I think you're weird too. No really. You're in no position to judge since you hate hot sauce, had a pedophilic relationship with Ink Rose in the past, and played D&D. Hypocrisy? What's that?
I'm only really going with the video on the Cloud Palace because that kind of encapsulates the bigger picture better, that Joshua has only really reverted back to his old ways if anything. And that's just disappointing really. But we've only just begun in the land of frustration. Buckle in. So, while I was coming up with the entries for this list, I came to the realization that the format to this list is going to be really weird. And I say that in the sense that this year has been a year of bad degree chains. For those who aren't entirely sure what a degree chain is, they're videos that cover videos that cover videos. Every commentary is inherently a first degree, and anytime a commentary is made on a commentary, it too gets placed as a degree chain. And god, this year had lows and degree chains that just made me unhappy. Though I will say it's on brand. This entire year is going to be interesting to talk about in a year. Speaking of bad degree chains, hello Mr. A and Keyblade Master, you're both in the hot seat for this one.
My mother is... Shoot, I can't remember.
Oh boy, plot contrivances. Don't you just love it when people do that?
Now, let me make this clear. Keyblade's video is albeit kind of an honorable mention to this list, mostly because his video came out in late 2019, even before my worst of the year list that year. So not only is it kind of a missed opportunity by 2019 Doodle, and trust me, there are a few of those, technically speaking, this video is not eligible for this year. However, I would be remiss to not talk about it while I'm discussing the video this year that is eligible. So, let's talk about it. Key, Sarah, and Jasiva's tryout from last year is a mess. Taking out the intro skit that literally makes no sense within context of the rest of the commentary due to the fact it starts off with a reference to a video that was on a different channel, and Sarah's need to constantly call back to other commentaries and commentators as his primary source of humor with jokes that were quite obviously made with at least some intention of stirring some drama.
Now before Karome takes me out of context,
You have the overall contradictory feeling of the entire video where Keyblade starts us off on a disclaimer talking about how old the video is, how much they know Arkham probably doesn't still stand behind the video, and how much other people could possibly learn from the mistakes that Arkham Knight Rider had in his video. And then they just turn around and chuck out the final thoughts from their video because Arkham wouldn't listen. Probably in due respect from the fact that he doesn't still stand behind his video, the very thing that Key acknowledged early on. Which further raises questions if nothing else, but it's that lack of quality control that leads the rest of this video looking unfortunately lazy and really outdated and kinda just slapped together because they didn't want to find a different video to cover together.
okay, so while doing a video on something you agree with isn't inherently a bad thing, since I've done this as well in my Fire for Victory commentary, however, since the point of a commentary is to point out flaws with a video, would it not be more beneficial to find something you disagree with, since there are likely to be more flaws found in a video than a video you do agree with?
Oh yeah! The point sucked too. Be it from a lack of evidence to something as simple as, was it actually subjectivity that led to Arkham's downfall? To something a little more frustrating as Key and Morgan, played by Jasiva, audio ducting over Arkham's examples the moment they start up and acting like they persist ad nauseum when we, by this point, see like maybe 2 short examples. This becomes a chore to watch through, and coming from commentators I normally expect better from, it becomes increasingly frustrating to watch them flounder every point to a video that also wasn't exactly what I would call particularly great. But that said, it's not like Mr. A. Bennett and Dwebley did much better.
Hey, that's a funny and clever joke you made. Much laughter and fun was had during this time of joy and ha-has. Despite the fact that it was essentially a reference for the sake of a reference. And that video was from 2 years ago. And the creator has disowned it for the longest time. Wait, what was I saying?
Fucking ding!
Their video wanted to focus more on the repetitious nature of Sarah's referential humor over actually debunking the problematic points within the tri-op. And that reference counter that Mr. A introduces fairly early on in the video only cements that being the case. However, what the three fail to realize is that when you focus primarily on one problem being repetitious and you constantly harp on that point throughout your video therein becomes a repetitious mess too, and while that's probably the most egregious piece of hypocrisy in this video, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't notice several other instances. Such as Bennett getting onto Key's case for speeding through his lines while having their own line delivery sound like an audition for a Twista cover band.
Okay, you know what? This entire intro skit's been bugging the shit out of me so far. Like, everyone's talking so quickly, I actually had to check numerous times to see if I didn't accidentally have the video at 1.5 speed.
If I could put on my tinfoil hat for a second, I feel like the reason this video is the way it is because how the points have been rewritten and re-recorded so many times that some of Arkham's original point gets lost in the shuffle.
And if the three weren't being a mess of hypocrisy, we have that other egregiously repetitive problem throughout their video that constantly sent me into orbit screaming at the top of my lungs regarding the age of Arkham's original video. Guys! Key acknowledged that Arkham probably doesn't stand behind the video by saying other people could probably take away from the problems Arkham had. While they do say Arkham hasn't shown total disassociation from it, that doesn't mean that they aren't acknowledging the possibility. We don't need you three constantly hammering it in as if that's the biggest issue with their video. Because one, it implies that doing a commentary on an old video is indeed a problem when the problem with Key's trial is how they went about covering it in a way that doesn't look at it retrospectively, but more from the confines of March of 2019, and two, completely ignores Key's initial disclaimer that the three cover at the beginning anyway, so they simultaneously acknowledge it while ignoring it. Go figure.
The burden would fall onto Keyblade & Co. to prove that the video was deleted for any other reason than the fact that they no longer stand behind it. But that seems like it would be a tall order, considering I can't think of any reason someone would intentionally delete a video that didn't tie back into no longer standing behind the video in some way.
I can, considering Arkham has disassociated from the CC. One could say that he just wants to clean up his channel so that way people know he did. That doesn't instinctively mean he doesn't stand behind the criticisms towards the user or the videos in question. That just means he wants to go do something else. And this point being made after 2019 when several commentators had already quit and got rid of their videos so they could disassociate from the CC is incredibly oblivious at best. Look, I'm just saying, with everything this video harps on and how persistent it is to make those points, any points that are valid, and I'll be fair to say that there are a few, they're just buried under the frustrating bits so much that I couldn't mentally concentrate on any positives.
Oh boy, a three-way joke and a try-op. I certainly haven't heard that one before.
Of course, given how low this is on this list, it's far from the worst thing I've seen all year, but given how much was done wrong here, I can't help but feel somehow more disappointed by it than anyone else seemed to be. Perhaps that's just my hot take of the year though, but I think I'll stick to my guns on this one. See, this next entry is even weirder than the rest of this list, and I'm not exactly sure where to take it in terms of direction, as for the most part, both videos share very similar issues, both having almost the exact same points between them, with mild differences tweaked to make the cinematic parallels not look like blatant plagiarism. These videos both talk about manga comment purportedly jokingly covering Lily Orchard's infamous writing tips from earlier this year, and somehow we wound up with not one, but two videos ignoring the intent of Common's video to make it seem worse than it arguably is.
Oh, so all the points you were making throughout the video were actually supposed to be bad. They were intentionally bad, right? Right? Of course, this was an excuse so I wouldn't cover his video.
Yeah, this comedy point doesn't sit well with me. I fail to see how this is a comedy video at all. It's the same as your other commentaries. You make points and crack a few jokes.
Now, on its own, this skepticism wouldn't inherently be a problem. I too have seen my fair share of people hiding behind the guise of a joke video when they're called out for making shit points. This happens, and to be honest, it's arguably happened with Common in the past when I made my unofficial one-shot on him a couple years ago. I will also say that there is definitely something to be said about these jokes possibly having points behind them. It is very much possible to make a point in a joking manner that can still be critiqued or debated if the reasoning behind them is flawed. To be honest, this isn't what I take issue with in these videos. If that was the only thing to their skepticism, I wouldn't have even thought to put them on my list. But it's how both Nekokoda and Deviant Crow look at Common explicitly saying this video is done with the intent to be humorous, and act as if this is just him shielding himself from criticism that I take issue with. Oh yeah, they also both say that cancel culture isn't real because it doesn't completely off the careers of people.
If cancel culture is so easy to prove, then, prove it. And I know he does later bring up Chris Pratt, but by definition, if cancel culture did affect Chris Pratt and it was real, and he was a prime example of it, he would have lost his job.
Pyrocynical was accused of sending sexual DMs to a minor, and the allegations were basically proven true. And we still have commentators who make mental gymnastics in order to try to say he's innocent. Cancel culture my ass!
Cyberbullying isn't real, just turn off the fucking monitor.
Which, I'm sorry, that's hella toxic, because I can point to a number of people who were unjustly cancelled and only got out of the hot seat once someone else spoke up in favor. Blueborg16 was straight up hacked and had their Twitter account deleted before they got a chance to speak up. The Madame situation happened, like she tried canceling a smaller artist called Slimmers, and I'm sorry, does Spectre Tech just not exist to you two? As much as you two will deny being in the SCC, no, you both were in the same community with Ponder Sprocket when that happened. I'm not gonna let you get away with the I don't know them guys with me, Coda.
However, I found a video by this one user named Toganium. I don't know.
Z-Fixes are, as much as their behavior was less than desirable, had a similar thing happen to them that Blueborg did, where they were just hacked before potential redemption. Then there's the famous examples of James Charles, Pro, Jared, and Slazo. All three bled subscribers until they spoke out about their accusations being fabricated, and even then Jared hasn't exactly come back with a full recovery. And all of that's even taking out my own feelings towards some situations, such as when I spoke out about a certain raccoon last year. Other cinematic parallels between the two videos include ignoring how genre shifts and tonal shifts can be one of the same by trying to specify what Orchard was talking about as one, and not the other, and then ignoring how Common specifies the problem should therein lie within the context of how it's being used, and not what's being done.
One, she's not talking about tone changes, she's talking about genre changes. And you even address that later, so why do you even bring up tone changes is beyond me.
The point is that if a show is a comedy or a drama, it shouldn't flip-flop between the two.
Stretching to defend Lily from the goblins are anti-Semitic point by using J.K. Rowling, everyone's favorite TERF, as an example of how goblins inherently are anti-Semitic, ignoring how Common's point was that the problem stems from those who made the connection to begin with. Now, both of these issues have their own issues, with Crow saying that traditional goblins are anti-Semitic because of J.K. Rowling's more modern take on them, and Coda straight up cites a source that say they might not be intentionally so, thus falling under Common's umbrella of those making the connection to begin with being the problem.
No one is attributing Jews to goblins, you fucking idiot. They're attributing goblins to the hateful Jewish stereotypes. For an example of how the traditional goblin is anti-Semitic, go look no farther than to Harry Potter, when the goblins are portrayed as owning the banks, you know, being greedy, having a lot of money.
You barely addressed the root claims that goblins are anti-Semitic. I know Lily doesn't elaborate, but you could have at least done a little bit of research. Like here, I found an article that states that goblins and Harry Potter share a lot of traits with offensive Jewish stereotypes.
Ultimately, I had a problem deciding between the two to put on this list and was probably just going to wind up making another 2-entry segment that covers the same video, but then Crow decided that it was a good idea to antagonize Common at the end of her video because of an albeit childish reaction Common had in retaliation towards Crow saying that they were going to cover Common. And that's what kind of got this chucked up here. We didn't really need this tacked on at the end of the video as it doesn't really tie into the overall point Crow is making, but regardless, Crow decided to show us their true mad plushy colors toward the end here, showing that they're as spiteful as they used to be towards those she covers. It's a damn shame, really.
The only reason I can believe that you're getting so worked up about a little channel over me is because I'm right. Or you fear that I'm going to be right again and say something that can make you look bad. And honestly, that's kind of funny to think about.
Damn shame. So, pop quiz. Does anyone here remember what the worst commentary of 2019 was? In my opinion, if you didn't watch that video, allow me to reintroduce Omnizoa, someone who basically defended pedophilia by comparing it to the LGBT, by saying pedophilia is a sexuality and that transgenderism shouldn't even be in the LGBT, comparing the term MAP to the term liberalist for what ultimately ended up being arbitrary reasons at best, and basically called his target problematic for warning their younger audience about pedophiles on Twitter and what to watch out for while on Twitter. This went down as the worst commentary I think I've ever seen, and I'll tell you this right now, nothing this year tops it. So why was it so hard to cover?
Okay, I have a lot to say here. Number one is every single interjection of yours literally just to blow out the video because it feels that way. Two, it feels like you're defending them. It really does. It feels like you are defending these Twitter people.
Lindata, as some of you may know, did wind up being on last year's list too, just being under a position from Omni, and I'll say that certainly things have changed within their channel, but I don't know if I'd strictly say for the better. I know they went on to take my This Is Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, which wasn't a problem to me until I noticed they also pinched assets that I didn't give them to use, and I don't know, the videos they released under this new moniker have been pretty subpar at best, with arguably the best video I've seen from them being a video on me, and even then I have my complaints. However, easily the worst video I've seen from them is the video on Omni, and to call it frustrating would be the final understatement of the year.
Okay, so apparently now comparing transgenderism to pedophilia is apparently acceptable now. Yeah, the world does not work this way, in any way, shape, or form. If it was anything like that, there would be crime rife on the streets, like there already is today, but worse.
So I think the best way to start this is by addressing the biggest elephant in this video, being Lindata's constant repetition of the phrase, "This isn't how the world works," whenever Omni would say something detestable. These points get annoying fast because not only are they repeated ad nauseum throughout the entire second half, but Lindata also does nothing to explain how the world does work, contrary to what Omnizoa was saying. Just a dragged out, "This isn't how the world works, buddy, next point," all the while I'm screaming at my computer trying to contact Lindata through the time stream and telling them how they could better this point. Then, to make matters worse, Lindata goes and basically claims that Omni is a pedophile himself without any evidence proper to back it up other than the fact that Omni is defending it. Never mind that you could defend or support something while not practicing it yourself.
Okay, the fact that you are legitimately trying in this interjection to normalize the way that pedophiles think is blatantly disgusting, and if you honestly cannot see that, then honestly I have suspicions as to if you're one yourself.
It's unfortunate that this video winds up having a lot of the same issues as last year's 6-parter, and I'll give credit where it's due, they are trying to get better, albeit they have a ways to go with not rushing into things, and I'll give it that even this video, as frustratingly tedious of a chore it is to sit through from beginning to end, isn't nearly as bad as the hour and 40-minute Gale bashing we saw a year ago. However, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't believe that this video ultimately didn't earn its place on my list at the end of the day. I find that a lot of my lists do feel like a lot of the same recurring talking points get brought up time and time again. And when it comes to things like abrupt and vague pedophile allegations, videos made purely on the backs of spite, or videos that misconstrue the context of discussion, these things get brought up again and again in my list every year or so because they're just absurdly common. But never had I felt the urge to literally put the exact same video on a list because it was re-uploaded by the same video uploader a year later. That is until this year, when Steve the Unknown Nerd took down all of his videos on his channel to wipe the slate clean, and then started from scratch re-uploading the same video on Illumation that I talked about the year prior on 2019's Worst of the Year list, only now with text-to-speech.
Girl, that's an apple to oranges comparison. He's one guy and you have 1.31 million subscribers and 11,484,782 people saw this video, so a bit unfair.
However, that feels like cheating, because we all know how I feel about that video, and literally copy and pasting the script where I talk about it feels like a level of no effort that I don't particularly wish to cop out in doing. So as much as I still detest that video and thought people were sleeping on it even a year later, I didn't put it on this year's list. Instead, I put the video he did on my video on him from last year on my list because that on its own has a lot of issues on it. And then I put his second video on my commentary later because that was somehow worse. Keep The Girl Is Done, Daniel Smith, and Studio 71 in your mind for later, because they are pretty important players in this game.
Or, we could leave them out of this, because they have reasons as to why they did it.
Really though, I'm not super surprised he did this. Steve has a habit of basically making the same video again and again on this channel, as evidenced by the video that I did on him covering 2 videos he made on my one video on Tom4427, and the video on Illy, where he literally did re-upload the same video point for point. Steve wound up taking a couple cracks at my video on him, and just like the first 2 videos he did on me, the second one was somehow worse in execution, considering Steve went from just being oblivious and ultimately harmless with his bad points outside of his accusatory pedophile allegations of Tom, to maliciously manipulative in trying to make his targets seem as bad as possible with context purposely revoked or twisted in favor of whatever point he wanted to make, drizzled with some spite on top. Like, those final thoughts went from merely saying Tom should die, which still isn't great by the way, to straight up telling Tom and I to kill ourselves.
Here's a better idea for the both of you, just kill yourselves. Because no one cares about the both of you. Anyway everyone, this is Steve the Unknown Nerd signing off. See you guys in my next commentary.
And if that doesn't tell you what kind of video this was, then allow his continual justification of double standards regarding the harassment of Tom to tell you. Because given Steve was still on the pedophile allegations, he thought his friends were so justified in harassing Tom while simultaneously seemingly forgetting that he was initially getting onto my case for my fans supposedly harassing Tom. The double standards he throws around in this video, on top of how many things he twists in his favor and context he blatantly removes throughout, can also help paint the right picture as to the fact Steve was more interested in calling pedo and harassment allegations over actually giving a proper argument. I'll admit I have no idea how to segue into this one. Do I start by talking about a drama that I personally think didn't need to get as big as it did and that everyone in the art community was talking about due to the fact the subject in question got involved a couple of times? Do I talk about the new commentators in this community and how many there were this year before bringing up how my target is one of those? Do I arbitrarily bring up the Clap Palace again to segue into talking about one of its members? There just really doesn't seem to be an appropriate correct answer here, so here you go.
Also, I might add that you might have saved yourself by being quiet about who the person is in question. And by that, I mean stating that the person jumping could have been a horrible human being and undeserving to go to heaven entirely if they have committed atrocities.
Only Jesp has certainly made her rounds this year, teetering the same lines of drama channel that Ponder has been teetering for a few years now. From the tale of Lumi Starbun to both her videos talking about that implied Toby drama that the latter quarter of this year would not shut up about, and even her first video on Semantics made a bit of a splash in our community, though probably for reasons Jesp would probably like to forget. However, that video wound up making the list this year for its sheer condescendingly gross tone almost exclusively, which might not sound bad considering all the pedophile allegations we've had up to this point, but whose gross tone makes this video oh the much more frustrating to sit through.
Almost as if you're a teenager with only an iceberg of understanding mental illness, let alone logical fallacies. I am 90% sure you are a kid, so giving you kitty gloves for this video would be a safe bet.
Seriously, if Jesp isn't misconstruing the point of Sevantic's video or making some frankishly outlandish points that make no sense in context, she's instead belittling Sevantics by calling her a child who cannot possibly understand mental illness because she has issues with Tumblr posts that put the idea of suicide in a somewhat positive light. And, like, don't get me wrong, Sevantic's video is just about as frustrating given, yes, there is a brash disregard of tact and nuance in her video that definitely in hindsight could have been worked out despite how good I think her intentions were, but being destructively demeaning isn't going to help anything, especially when Jesp has interjections where she flat out basically calls Sevantics dumb.
I don't understand that this kid could be sensitive that even the thought of someone yelling at them. We don't want to be insensitive. Think of the children. Think of the children.
Oh yeah, then there's her little friend. Look, obviously I'm not one against commentary characters. I mean, have you seen the stuff that I put out? But I certainly have an issue with how this blue data character is done. She's introduced to us as a source of positivity early on in the video, but doesn't show it by the end, as she practically becomes a second Jesp with a higher voice. The two don't interact throughout most of the video, and when they do, their chemistry is so half-handed that I didn't initially notice it going through it. Ultimately, this video goes on a wall of bad first impressions, and from there I'm just gonna move on. Next. Speaking of bad first impressions, we have Slumber! I won't lie, when Slumber's initial trilogy on Dan Stein popped up, I didn't pay it too much mind, but then I started hearing more about it, and, it's a doozy. I can give part 2 in that it's short and the point made is not egregiously the worst thing in existence, and part 1 definitely has its good points despite how much I hate Slumber's attitude throughout it. But part 3 was what made me want to cover the whole kit and caboodle because Christ alive, this thing is a mess!
In the context that you try to ruin your own reputation, you're correct. The title wasn't clickbait.
Ah yes, I do love me some half-hearted Danganronpa attorney crossover videos. To get a production nitpick out of the way, Slumber throughout the video plays agreements and counterclips to show which points she biasly agrees or disagrees with, and she does this literally every interjection, causing the video to repetitiously slog throughout each point. However, the nitpick I want to point out is how she does this with Kaede's counters, yet has Kyoko as her avatar. Like, that on its own is just a crime. But all joking aside, the way each of these interjections start makes the obvious homage to Danganronpa seem really lazy and kind of annoying after a while. Especially since none of Slumber's points really amount to much more than a no you.
I ask you, like, why is it really alarming to you? It's literally just them wanting the debate, dude. Unless you're just scared of the debate, that shouldn't be an issue.
I mean, there is a pretty high likelihood that it's not even a debate at all, and it's just simply him trying to provoke me.
No, that's wrong.
Dan, I'm pretty sure it would be the other way around, but go off, I guess.
Speaking of no use, am I the only one that took notice of the chain this thing sparked, basically surrounding how Dan doesn't want to debate someone who quite clearly doesn't have his best interest in mind? Like, look, I don't like the kid either, but to sit here and to try to force him into a situation he's obviously uncomfortable in, and to get your friends involved is, well, kind of textbook bullying, really? So to sit there and condone it whilst simultaneously calling Dan the instigator just feels gross.
Dan, you're very clearly scared, so shut up.
I'm honestly not sure where else to go with this segment. I've pretty much covered everything else in one fell swoop, so next entry, I guess. I've been criticized in the past for having too many videos on me make year-end lists every year, but if I may address that, it's simply because I watch a lot of videos on myself. Like, one of the big things I was criticized for in 2017 was not doing that, so I've been trying to do my best to swallow my pride and take the deep dive into what could be said about me. Always hoping for a bit of legitimate criticism, and simply put, if you didn't catch this from the amount of videos on me that I cover throughout a year, I don't think very many of them are good. Perhaps you can call it conceited all you want. I have had 7 entries, 13 if you count honorable mentions, make the list the past 4 years that are direct commentaries on me. And if I hadn't made it clear yet, this year's no exception. But also, in fairness to me, do you realize how many videos get made about me?
You do know that he just may be role-playing, right? He's just freaking role-playing, probably. You're not supposed to take it seriously. It's just a guy role-playing as a fictional character. It's plus videos. God, I've never met this much stupid people in my life.
Oh, Oswald. So once again, we kinda got a double feature here. Raven the Commentator 2001 and Sonic Shadow 98. I'll admit, Raven is easily not as bad as Oswald is in this chain. In fact, she was moved off this list into the honorable mentions box, but that's not to say that I don't still look at Raven's video in a much more negative light than most of the other things that I saw this year. I don't like vague and unproven pedophile allegations in my commentary. I think I should have cemented this fact by now. However, if it wasn't for that pedo revelation, Raven's video still has a lot of faults in it that still bug me, as she had more than one moment where she used evidence that Sonic Shadow wouldn't have known in order to try to shut down points that Oswald made.
No. In the video where Boon Slayer voiced Sapphire, he said parents, not birds. He even said in a comment on Doodle's video on you that he can't say parents or anything resembling a southern accent jokingly. And with a good point, might I add.
On top of the hypocrisy I noticed throughout this video, such as telling Oswald to have a point whilst going on a long tirade about her avatar in the commentary group Pog, which was dated in the year anyway. Nice going, Umbrus. She also gets onto Oswald's case for making a video on me out of spite, whilst showing behaviors that would normally be considered spiteful from any other commentator, as she goes out of her way sometimes to presume the worst from Oswald without any evidence to back it up. Calling him pretentious for wanting to cut a video short, saying that all he does is belittle and berate others in all of his videos, with only like one other example of that being the case from a drama Sonic Shadow was a part of that we knew basically fuck all about since it was in a different community, not helped by the lack of context Raven gives during her final point in the video.
So, I was talking with Azrael 101, and he gave me some very disturbing pieces of evidence that reveal who Oswald is. You see this picture here? This is a request from him for a girl named Victoria to draw. It's a picture of a humanoid version of Twilight Sparkle in a bra, but Twilight is seen to be a young teenager and not an adult. This is creepy as all hell, as this proves that he is a pedophile.
That said, yeah, Sonic Shadow was worse in this chain, and this is where we're at in this list. Because as much as Raven wanted to pin him as spiteful, it's not like there wasn't evidence of it plaguing his video on me in the worst ways possible, given every other interjection is him either insulting me directly or trying to otherwise make excuses for the person I was responding to in a pitiful attempt to devalue my points over actually debunking them.
You do know that writing scripts takes forever, right? It takes a long ass time, which can be very tedious.
Like, come on, if you're going to argue a production critique like write a script so you don't meander on, the least you could do is, not basically say you're too lazy to do that and act as if that on its own is going to fix the problems of you meandering on. Not only that, but I'd argue that Sonic Shadow's video on me is like the best example of how not to cover a video from years ago, considering you could reference back to a lot of Sapphire Sonic's video from 2016 and debunk every other point that's not excusing bad production habits. And it's obvious that Oswald never watched the video he's defending, not helped by the fact both parts were deleted years ago off of Sapphire Sonic fans' channel.
You do know that the whole Buzz playing Pokemon thing is probably just a joke. He probably wanted to be a little bit satirical in his commentary.
So yeah, Oswald's video is trash. No surprise there. It's a video that was made years after a back and forth between two individuals who barely even remembered anything moved on purely because the new individual involved hated that his friend had a response video thrown his way years ago. Like, what more can you say to such a video that isn't pedophile allegations, I guess? Its spiteful nature speaks for itself, especially when the final thoughts of Sonic Shadow's video straight up tells me to get off of YouTube because no one cares about what I have to say. Something that not even 2017 me did to Sapphire Sonic fan, and I called the dude possibly autistic in an edgy and tasteless attempt at a joke.
Doodletones, get a frickin' life. If all you're doing is commentary videos and you speed up your voice to sound like a chipmunk and nobody will take you seriously, then this proves that you're a failure in life. Also, Sapphire Sonic fan said nothing wrong and out of line in his commentary. He actually threw some good points, which you were lacking throughout the entire video. I was only able to pick up one good point from you in your video response to him, which isn't saying much. Doodletones, do yourself a favor and get the fuck off the internet. Nobody wants to see your BS, except for your fans.
And now it's time for some extra honorable mentions. It is a bit early, I'll admit, but I want to get them out of the way for a reason we'll get to here in a bit. Tack these on to everything else I mentioned was an honorable mention earlier on in the list.
I just saved you 3 hours. You're welcome.
Bruh. Cringe.
I know this is kind of unrelated and odd for me to bring up now, but I just love how I never proved that statement and how nobody ever once brought that up. And just like in general, nobody questioned me.
V Omega fucking loses it and unscriptedly rambles for damn near 2 hours about how bad the commentary community is. He takes 6 or 7 minutes to get to the fucking video, goes off topic to talk about Pink Robot for reasons I couldn't figure out for the life of me, and like, geez, V, if it wasn't for your explosion on Twitter, you were gonna end on such a whimper. I'll give you the benefit of doubt, though. As far as CC rants go, you could have done a lot worse. Ain't that right, Gwiss?
Better or worse, it's because of these shows that I have my YouTube account, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. So, no matter what I say to any of these shows, I do have to be at least a little bit thankful with each and every one of them on the list. Each of them is another little memory, and they were a part of the path to where I am today.
I barely ever really paid attention to Clay Claymore. I maybe watched 1 or 2 other videos of his, so I don't know if this is normal for him, but yeah, this video comes off as rather vindictive at the best of times, with Clay barely making any legitimate points against Inter's video, and instead spent a chunk of the video just kind of berating the guy with ad homs and low-blow personal attacks. It's kind of disappointing, really. And now, well, you may be wondering why I started doing honorable mentions after the number 3 segment. And that's because numbers 2 and 1 are rather interchangeable. Let's get into them. So let me introduce you all to the 5 Children of the Corn. Peppertay, Umbrus, Azrael101, Boltzifer, and Slumber. Literally, these 5 were involved in so much infighting this year, it was like I couldn't go a week without hearing that one of them did something to another one of them. The SCC this year low-key turned into a daycare, I swear to God. With that in mind, I'm only going to be talking about 4 out of the 5 here. Pepper gets off scot-free this year as I didn't watch anything of theirs. Lucky you.
What the fuck are you doing? Okay, 1, you acknowledge the fact that he counteracted your previous point wrong, and your retort is that it's obvious.
The other 4 aren't so lucky. Meet the Purely Odd Grandmasters, a commentator group that decided its first commentary would be on the aforementioned Slumber trilogy on Dan. However, only covering part 1, and botched it they did. In fact, take everything I said about Mr. A's try-op on Keyblade Master and dump it all in here, but without hardly any valid points that don't get shot in the head by the try-op's utter lack of cooperation and communication. They sit there and rail against Slumber for her insults towards Dan, while all insulting her more often than what they show of her, even to the point they have an entire interjection dedicated to doing so. These insults go as far as to either call Slumber a bitch or to insult her voice, or to tell Slumber that they want to strangle them. Some of these insults just, honest to God, go too far.
Also, is it just me or does this woman have an obsession with Dan? A majority of her videos as a scripting are about Dan. Do all 8,000 nerves of her clitoris go insane whenever she doesn't make a video about Dan?
Of course, if it isn't spiteful potshots at Slumber, it's the garbage points. Misconstruing points as strawmen while they weren't, while simultaneously strawmanning her points, doing ear rape jokes while getting onto both Slumber and Dan's case for not properly balancing their audio, inconsistently ignoring points because they inconsistently claim not to be able to understand their target while simultaneously mumbling half their lines, has interjections where they say nothing while getting onto Slumber's case for having interjections that don't make a point. Do you get the idea? This video is the pinnacle of hypocrisy, and it gets ever the more frustrating hearing them spout all this hypocritical nonsense, whilst they constantly mock Slumber for stuff that shouldn't really be mocked.
Since you already use the same 7 steps over and over again, your characters only move once in the video, and you introduce us as true fuckers without telling us, interjected half of the time instead of insult instead of critique, and putting your own bias.
We'll get to that.
In the video, I could have made this shit in 5 minutes. What the fuck do you mean?
Bummer Patrol and I both did really lengthy videos on the POG try-op if you want a more in-depth look into problems and have a couple hours to kill. Bummer Patrol's video is significantly better, of course, but my video exists too, and it's not that bad. Not like, say, the other video here on number 1, created by Dan Stein. Goody.
I mean, the reason why they're changing the design in the first place is not to be mean-spirited, but instead so they could be able to show Akai how, you know, the changes could potentially do some good to her character, you know?
So yeah, the video that Slumber covered in the video on the PodCom covers arrived here tied for first, because really, both these videos are interchangeably bad, but whereas the PodCom is frustratingly hypocritical in every point they make, and grossly vindictive to boot, Dan here is just really stupid and agenda pushy, making points that are predicated on a lack of information about a topic he's trying to cover, whilst simultaneously pushing a narrative that Akai Dahlia, some Sonic dweeb, was a pedophile alongside Holy Majesty, previously known as Ghost EXE, all because Majesty wanted to retrospectively look back at a situation he thought was petty.
Run for your lives, you little motherfuckers! There is a pedophile on YouTube!
Some highlights to this video that bother me that I in particular want to point out is an ideology I remember Dan sporting within his commentary on Joni Brunei's commentary on Red Wolf that he repeats here. It's an ideology predicated on the past being a pattern that is easily predicted by knowing what the previous actions were. The past is the best indicator of the future, as he words it. Used within the confines of trying to elaborate as to why he feels Akai Dahlia is a pedophile by attempting to draw parallels between her and some guy called Paul and Amy who apparently went out and preyed on minors.
Alright, let me just tell you guys a story. Now there's this guy on the internet who's named Paul and Amy. He's a guy who had a crush on the fictional character Amy Rose. Amy Rose is a 12-year-old. This guy is like a full-grown adult, right? This guy later on actually started sexually abusing real children. So yeah, it's undeniable. She's sexually attracted to Sonic. And as we all know, Sonic is 15, and, you know, the Paul and Amy situation, the past is the best indicator of the future.
However, as I mentioned in my video on the pod commentary, this ideology blatantly ignores how people are intrinsically growing all the time. And to try and predict someone is going to be a child abuser by vaguely comparing them to an actual child abuser is not a good idea because, yeah, fuck context, am I right? Everyone's a goddamn pedophile because of what I think they'll do. Ain't that right, Sherman? You know, given all of the pedophile allegations we've seen this year, this has to be hands down the dumbest out of all of them, because it's based on a flimsy assumption on something vague. But of course, that's not all we have to worry about in Dan's video, that's just arguably the most egregious of it. Of course, there's all that lack of evidence to really any of Dan's points, no matter how small, and blatant lying about things that were said in the discussion, such as how much benefit of doubt he gave Ghosty, and whether or not Akai Dahlia being effectively Amy Rose in palette was a complaint that Sonic 93 brought up. Showing that Dan really did his damnedest to rush this video out in a half-ass attempt at defending his senpai Sonic 93. Cemented by the fact he even says the video took a couple days to make, in the same point where he moves the goalpost of the discussion to Akai's character being just sex when he ran out of arguments.
Okay, so, you know how earlier in the video I said that maybe he might be right about how the complaints about Akai Dahlia being overly sexualized can be conceived as ridiculous? Well, I think I might have had a revelation. So as you guys may know, this video took days to make. Well, exactly 2 days, but you know what I mean. That gave me a lot of time to think about something. And that thing that I was thinking about is maybe people may be right about complaining about Akai being an overly sexualized character, but it's not for the reason you think. Okay, let me explain this. Akai's entire character is just sex. That's it. Akai Dahlia, in my opinion, is one of the most one-dimensional characters there is. She's just nothing but sex, and sex, and it's nothing but sex.
Dan was really more focused on trying to get into controversy and being contrarian with the intent of exposing someone he didn't like as his main goal. This strategy only really serves to be a tactical nuke in videos like this though, because if you do it incorrectly, it shows that you're less interested in discussion and more interested in taking people down by being the martyr shining a light on people's misdoings. And unless you have the hard evidence to back it up, I would advise against doing this, especially when a discussion is as negligible as Sonic OCs. However, if it was just Dan Stein doing this tactic, this wouldn't be more than an isolated incident and I wouldn't care as much as I do now. But as we can see throughout this video, that's easily not the case. A lot of people threw allegations around as if they were going out of style, and this has just been the tone of the past few years. I have said in the past that content cop was probably the worst thing to happen to YouTube because people have ever since strived to be the next iDubbbz, trying to outdo one another on what they could find about a person and trying to expose them for deeds that either could have been worked out in private or were just false from the get-go. Cancel culture is real, and it's a problem plaguing basically the internet as the more these kinds of allegations come out, both the less effective they can become, which means when an actual pedophile, child groomer, rapist, or anything else gets spotted, less people are going to give a fuck, but also could contradictorily seem to work out in the sense that a person's income and support dies out significantly and absolutely ruins a person's reputation so they can never come back from the deeds they did in the past. It's a gamble, and the false ones add on to them potentially being taken less seriously the more evidence is falsified. If you're thinking about partaking in this kind of behavior, don't. Or if you really, really have to, I guess, then be cautious. I'd still recommend against it though. The more these allegations come out, the more it feels like no one wants to even entertain the idea of redemption. Some of these content creators are small too and don't even make money off of what they try to do before having the evidence taken out of context and used against them, or alternatively had people claim something to be the case with evidence but misconstrue the idea of what's going on to be something that they don't understand. Our community in particular should be able to recognize and draw parallels to the Spot Protect situation when we see this stuff. That was a huge moment in the past couple years that we were here for, and Ponder's first video on the situation, I'd argue, is one of the most important commentaries in our community, because it shines a light on what to look for allegations like this. Unfortunately, people still want to throw around the word pedophile around like crazy, and others want to just believe them, and while there are people who have been called out of actually being such, the more you throw an object at a pole, the more likely of a chance you're going to miss the mark. And that's just where the inherent contradiction lies in talking about this subject, because yeah, it's easy to just say, oh, call out the bad people, because yeah, obviously I support awful people getting their comeuppance, but considering how many people believe they're doing the right thing by using these screen caps out of context and throwing around these allegations, how do we actually classify that? Like, at this point, this isn't even advice or a rant or anything. This is just a stream of conscience that I had while scripting, and I genuinely don't know where to go from here. Like, the script up to this point was cathartic to write. I was so glad I could just get feelings off of my chest. But now that I'm here at this point, at this, like, these final thoughts, I just have no idea where to take this train. I'm even falling off of script here. Like, this is just... I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. Blech. Anyway, so to not leave you guys off on such a sour note, here's my yearly brief best of the year list. I hope you guys enjoyed this list up to this point, at least.
That's what you get for using me as a quick side gag!
Well, it seems like this room has gotten hotter.
Tippy, have you been hanging around Bolt lately?
Yes, and I hate the fact that I got bad punitis.
20 minutes later.
It's still 5:30.
I could forgive you.
I cannot.
But no, I dared to use the anime.
But you didn't know how to use the anime. This is a contradiction.
Wait a minute. Jono Giovanna isn't black.
Good lord. This is probably the most tactless connection between Martin Luther King Jr. and the commentary community since TOG Professor. How does this even manage to happen twice?
Fuck, do we have another offense we can charge them with?
We can make another charge.
Can we make another charge? Are we allowed to do that?
I mean, we are the police.
Oh, well, what do we charge them for then?
Arson.
Never mind, this sucks. I'm gonna start talking now. Look, Luna, all Joni wanted was for you to at least try to explain the point. I already said it with the score part, but it was kind of not as obvious as you fucking thought it was. No excuses here. Also, holy shit, I was a problematic young lad back then, huh?
Nekokoda makes a pretty solid argument here that I can't say I disagree with. However, there's one thing I think he overlooked. What if they don't want to stand out? Hell, what if they don't care? What if they don't have any specific goals as a YouTube creator and just feel like making their videos for fun?
No, because we have a novella to write about this number 10 segment. So you're saying that the Squirtle line is exactly like the other early game Pokemon? Are you sure about that?
Well, his video is devoted to poorly explaining why Ghost EXE is a pedophile for defending Akai Dahlia, It may not be correct, nor is it founded on anything cogent, but he does spend time discussing why he thinks Ghost is a deviant. Hell, just looking at the title of Dan's video gives you the context of what he'd think is the problem.
Also, by your logic, does that mean we can take your video?
Oh shit, yeah, let's digitally rob his YouTube channel.
Alright, you take that side, I'll take this one.
This seem a lot lighter than you'd expect.
Well, what do you expect from something full of hot air? I'm surprised it didn't fly away.
Nothing's being taken from you. Inclusivity is meant to support people who are marginalized, get things to a point where they don't have to be attacked for just being who they are. And I care about this issue because I have so many valuable and caring trans friends, mutuals, and people I look up to. I'm not trans myself, but I know that inclusivity isn't a cult to destroy America or whatever.
I'll see you all next year. Hopefully 2021 doesn't kill us.